Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, okay, this afternoon, this is probably going to be the last episode that I do on Highland Park, because I've still not heard anything from the distillery or Maxim about samples, and I can't be asked to just keep chasing them up saying, are you going to send these samples? I've done it once, and if they don't want to send me samples to review, then fine. It's no real skin off my nose. I mean, maybe they're afraid I'll say something horrible about the 12-year-old, but who knows? Essentially, I've got a number of other tastings lined up where distilleries, independent bottlers and what have you are more than happy to send me samples, and at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't want to send samples for an episode of the show, well, fine. There's enough people that will do. And like I said, I mean, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be taking a little break from the A to Z and just doing a couple of other things, because I've got, like I said, a bit of a backlog, shall we say. But anyway, enough about all of that, and let's get back to Highland Park again. So, what have we learnt so far? Well, so we've kind of figured out that Highland Park is a bit of a late bloomer. It's a bit of a springbank kind of whisky, and seems to come into its own once it hits its kind of mid-teens kind of thing. And it's a really pleasant malt, and we're going to sort of have a look at some older bottlings now. We're now going to look at bottlings between the ages of 18 and 31, and looking forward to sharing that one with you, it has to be said. Obviously, not getting samples from the distillery. I mean, they probably never were going to send me a sample of the 40-year-old or the 50-year-old or something like that. So, I'm kind of going to have to make do with what we've got. And there was a bit of a, I did quite a few samples of Mckillip's Choice bottlings, old ones, and I was thinking, how am I going to cut them out? Which ones am I going to stick them all in? So that's why I've got 7, and I think this is going to be quite a really interesting tasting, and we've got some interesting ones. So I think it's probably enough waffle, and I'll just introduce this afternoon's little lineup, shall I? Right, okay, so we're going to kick off with a relatively more recent bottling. This is the Douglas Laing Old Particular 18-year-old. It was distilled in November of 1995 and bottled in December of 2013. So aged in American oak, and that will be basically our starting point for this afternoon's little tasting. Now this is a really old sample. This is the Murray McDavid Mission Series Highland Park 18, distilled in 1989 and bottled in 2007. It was finished in Grenache Blanc casks and bottled at 52.6 in the lovely gold tins, which, such a long time ago that was. Third sample we'll be looking at is another 18-year-old. This was distilled in 1992 and bottled in 2010, bottled by A.D Rattray. Cask number 2, rum cask finished. So this, if you remember the last one, there was a debate about whether the 16-year-old was rum cask finished, which I didn't think it was, but it might have been, and I still didn't get around to finding out. But this one definitely has been rum cask finished. So 2 wine finishes, so that should be quite interesting. And then we're going to get onto the age stuff. Now, I've tasted some of these before. Well, I've tasted all of them before, funnily enough, and we'll get to that bit when we get to it. So the first of the Mckillip's Choice bottlings is this particular one. It's a 23-year-old. It was distilled in June of 1988 and bottled in March of 2012 from a refill sherry but I think, and was bottled at 50.8%. Cask number was 716. The second of the Mckillip's Choice is a 1986 distillation, June of 86, bottled in January of this year at 50.9%. Cask number 2264, American Oak, I believe. And then the 29-year-old, this was distilled in 1985, February thereof, bottled in April of 2014 at 51.6, cask number 370. And finally, the 31-year-old. Oh, this was distilled in September of 1981, bottled in March of 2013, cask number 6083, bottled at 53.8%. So there you have it. I think this is going to be a really interesting little lineup. So settle back. It might take some time to get through this little lot. Right, okay, so let's kick off with the old particular 18-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us showing, shall we? Quite light, elegant, lots of barley. Possibly, I think this might actually even be refill sherry. It's got that slightly sort of sherried kind of richness, a little bit of spice. Doesn't smell 18, it has to be said. It's really quite young. It's certainly, I would have, if I was tasting this blind, I wouldn't have said this was much older than, say, 15. Lovely barley, bit of honey, a little bit of heather. Not a great deal of peat, hardly any peat at all. Not particularly earthy, but really full, really barleyed. Quite luscious. A little bit of, maybe it's not refill sherry, maybe that was just a, it's probably more American oak. But there's not a lot of oak character, and that's the thing about some of Douglas Lang's bottlings over the years. They often have a tendency to be generally refill casks, as for more description, and often don't have a huge amount of oak input, certainly in their older bottlings anyway, or their sort of mid-teens, early 20 bottlings. I know there's a bit of a generalisation, but anyway. Palate. Oh, that's a malty mouthful. Now that tastes older. That definitely tastes about 18. Quite coffeed, a little bit of treacle, toffee. Like I said, a lot of malt, big, not quite as elegant as the nose, but it's more denser, it's beefier, weightier. Again, no real peat, a little bit of earth, little herbal note. Yeah, that's really nice. It's interesting. I mean, it's the thing about some whiskies, as you probably well know. The nose can often be completely different to the palate, and I think this is definitely one of those whiskies. Certainly, like I said, the nose was all about sort of big barley and all that kind of stuff, and the palate completely different, all about the big malt and the chewiness, and yeah, lovely start. Great whiskey. Moving swiftly on to the Murray McDavid, I'm hoping that this sample hasn't degraded as it's quite old, and there wasn't an awful lot left in the sample bottle. So anyway, let's have a look. Actually, no, it's still pretty fresh. Quite high toned, winey, very herbal, very herbal in actual fact. Not getting a huge amount of barley or distillery character. It's all about these sort of winey fruits. There's a little bit of smoke underneath, a little bit of sweet, almost perfumed smoke, some Parma violet. Now we're getting a bit of character coming through. I mean, as you can remember, a lot of the Murray McDavid bottlings were very hit and miss with regards to the wine finishing. And certainly some of them, certainly the white wine finished ones, I think probably worked a little better than some of the red wine finished ones. But now I'm getting a lot more of that heathery kind of herbal character. A bit of barley coming through now. the sort of the wininess has kind of settled down, you know, and I mean that's often the case with a lot of whiskies. You just need to give it a bit of aeration. You know, initially what can be the most dominant character will often sort of settle down, and you know. But yeah, that's really pleasant. Pal. A little bit shortish, which is probably, like I said, the sample isn't obviously as fresh as what it was originally. But oh, just getting some lovely peat there. Really dusty, cold, dusty peat. That kind of came out of nowhere, it has to be said. I mean, initially it kicked off with the winey fruits. You got the sort of, you know, slightly apricot-y kind of white fruits, and then it kind of moved into sort of like the barley and heather and a little bit of honey, and suddenly out of nowhere comes all this peat. It's like, whoa, you know, that's really interesting, and quite sweet, but not overly sweet. It's got a bit of a coastal tang to the finish, which has kind of sort of freshened it a little bit, and obviously the alcohol, not 52, what was it, 52.6, something like that anyway, yeah, 52.6, certainly has sort of like helped with that sort of freshness and balancing up that sort of sweet winey kind of character that it had. So yeah, quite, that's nice. There's also got a little bit of sawdusty oak, a little bit of maturity sitting behind that wininess, so yeah, pleasant, really good. Okay, and moving on to the A.D Rattray rum cask finish. Let's see what the nose gives us on this. Oh yes, you can smell the rum cask on that. Stick my neck out and possibly say Guyanan rum. Really quite oily, juicy sort of sultanery dried fruits. Again, really herbal, some barley. A little bit of smoke. Oh, that's a lovely, lovely nose. That really is nice. Yeah, some fresher barley coming through. A little bit of honey. It's all really nicely balanced. There's no sort of one note sort of dominating the other. It's all really kind of mingling in quite nicely. A little bit of herbalness. A little bit of earth. Again, no real heavy peat. Bit of coffee. Oh, that is really, really complex. I remember we did stock this, and now this leads me on to a point that somebody made about us not stocking a load of these things. Well, we do. You know, it's just that because these are older bottlings, obviously they've come and gone. So that's the wonderful thing with single cask bottlings. You know, one day they're there, the next something else has replaced them. Palate. Oh, that's got a bit of a kick. Again, it's a bit like the old particular bottling. Really malty, really thick and juicy. The rum is a little bit darker in actual fact. It's a little bit more treacle, a little bit more dark coffee, more sort of pruny and raisins. Quite drying, quite a tannic finish, but the tannins are quite soft. But you kind of add that in with the alcohol. I mean, that was bottled at 58.6, so that does dry the finish a bit, and obviously there wasn't really enough left in that sample to add a little drop of water to, and I would guess that'll probably soften it up a little bit and probably lengthen it. But yeah, that again, that's a really, really malty, big, robust, juicy Highland Park. So it's just really interesting to see sort of like, you know, the two sides of its character. Yes, it can be quite a sort of like a dense, malty, kind of a brute, but you know, that kind of style. But yet it can be quite elegant and quite barleyed and perfumed and what have you. So yeah, that's another lovely bottling.
Once was a love, fading colors of dream, calling mercy from...
Okay, so let's move on to the first of the 4 Mckillop's Choice bottlings. Now, I think sort of more than any other independent bottling company, Mckillop's Choice are the most consistent in the quality of what Lawn is bottling. I mean, yeah, okay, so the stuff is bottling is generally speaking quite old, but I mean, I've only tasted a couple of their releases that really didn't sort of, you know, do it for me, and they weren't because they were poor quality spirit. It was just, the price, and you know, so you know, I think you can basically say if you find yourself a not necessarily a Highland Park, but anything that's been bottled by Mckillop's Choice, you're going to get, you know, a bloody good whiskey. So, but anyway, let's see what the nose gives us on this, then, shall we? Buttered toffee, a little bit of popcorn, some creamy oak, a lot of oak in actual fact. Herbal, very herbal, almost rye-like herbs. Really quite intense with the refill sherry. It's I imagine the cask was only probably reused once, maybe even twice, because there's a lot of it there. Again, it's quite malty underneath that. Some toffee, some coffee, big herbs, big butter. Oh, this is no sort of, well, shrinking violet, shall we say. It's a again a really sort of intense, chunky, deep. God, lovely oak, and it's, yes, there's a lot of oak, but it's nowhere near sort of like the only thing. You can certainly get the malty distillery character kind of coming through. Again, not particular, no real peat, a little bit of earth maybe. Oh, lovely. Pal. Cinnamon spices, a little bit of pepper. God, bloody hell, that's good. Not so much oak, interestingly enough, on the palate, and it's just a wash with spices. Really sort of invigorating and juicy and kind of spices. The oak is definitely there. It's still quite herbal. There's a bit of mint, a bit of thyme, some clove, coffee. Again, malty, big, robust. God, spice. All I can taste is spice now. It's just incredible. Really, really intense. Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. Lovely bottling. Okay, so moving on to the 28-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on that, shall we? Less malty, more barley, quite elegant, mature, but again, you know, it just 28, and it just does not feel like 28. Maybe sort of 21 possibly. I mean, it's just retaining its youth amazingly well. I mean, and I'm guessing this is probably why Highland Park can release 40, 50-year-old bottlings, because their spirit just ages so slowly. Again, it's starting to become quite malty. Some barley, some herbal notes, some heather, a distant, very distant element of smoke, a little bit of peat, some buttery oak. Oh, it's just fantastically complex. I mean, really, really good. Still fresh, just so fresh. It's stunningly good. Oh, This is the sort of whiskey, I mean, and okay, yeah, this is three figures whiskey without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, 28-year-old Highland Park, I mean, I'm guessing you're looking at the best part of about, what, 225, 230 quid maybe. But when they're this good, it's just like, oh my god. Unbelievable. Palate. Oh, the honey. That is so succulent and juicy. Loads of citrus. Honey and barley. A little bit of malt. Some herbal notes. Not so much in the way of spices on this particular bottling, and not quite as intensely malty. More barley. Tastes younger. It really tastes younger. It is incredible. A little bit of vanilla, a little bit of butter. Wonderfully mature, but youthful at the same time, or relatively youthful as the case may be. Lovely citrus finish. A little bit of smoke on the aftertaste, a little bit of earth. Again, you know, fairly robust, but this particular bottling seems to combine the robust maltiness with the barleyed elegance, and you know what? I think that's so far that I think is probably the outstanding bottling. The balance is just absolutely sublime. Bloody good. Right, okay, so let's see what the the 29 gives us. See if that can top this the 28-year-old, shall we? Fresher but maltier. A little darker, a little bit more toffee, coffee, denser herbal notes. It's a bit more tighter. It's a bit more less aromatic. There's not so much barley. It's getting a lot more herbs now. It's almost similar to the refill sherry bottling, the 23-year-old. Quite smoky, but in a sort of understated kind of manner. Again, lots of malt, darker, a little bit of butteriness coming through now. This seems to be the sort of like the kind of classic Highland Park, American oak aged Highland Park aged character. Again, sort of broad and malty and slightly dark and treacly. But still, you know, I mean, 29, you wouldn't have pegged it for 29 at all. Still got that wonderful freshness. A little bit of saltiness, but not a great deal, so I'm guessing they've spent probably a fair few years outside of the distillery, but that's no detriment to it, it has to be said. A little bit of dried fruit, a little bit of sultana, a little bit of oxidised fruit coming through now, sort of giving you that, you know, that sort of aged kind of implication. Palate. Now that does taste more like its age. I'm getting some of that dusty, sawdusty American oak, just like you do with some of the older Speyside whiskies. Again, quite spicy, a little bit peppery, a little bit of peat smoke on the finish, quite drying, a little bit of tannin, a little bit of chocolate and toffee and coffee. Again, relatively robust, probably more in the sort of malty kind of end of the Highland Park spectrum than the barleyed end. Quite salty on the finish, you know, nicely coastal, a little bit of citrus. Again, a really very, very good bottling. What more can you say? And finally, the 31-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Oh, another beautifully balanced malt. Again, the sort of balance between the maltiness and the barleyed fresh character. Quite mature. This is definitely showing its age. It's got that dusty American oak, got big slabs of honey, a little bit of herbalness, again a little bit of smoke, some dried fruit, some prunes, some raisin, but not sherry prune and raisin, more again the more oxidised, slightly baked fruit character. Oh, sublime. Depth on this is absolutely amazing. It's stunningly good. Quite herbal now, but I'm also getting quite a lot of buttery vanilla. It's just continuously changing. There's a new aroma coming out. You know, one thing leading to another, and it's just sort of knows you just sort of like sit there and just go. I mean, that is complex. That is very, very, very good. Oh, balanced. Palate. Juicy and drying at the same time. It's got that little bit of piquancy, a little bit of spice, peat smoke, but again, the balance is stunning. I mean, plenty of barley, mature oak, some maltiness, a little bit of dried fruit, some herbalness. In actual fact, it's probably the most Highland Parky of the Highland Parks. It had more of the classic kind of honey and heather and herbal notes that you would kind of associate with Highland Park. But again, got a lovely malty background, some lovely old wood, a little bit of stewed fruit, some spices, some coffee, fresh mentholy kind of spices on the finish, a little bit of citrus, a little bit of salt. Wow, wow. What malt to finish on. Right, okay, so let's sum this little episode of the show up. Firstly, big thank you to Mckillip's Choice for those stunning samples. I mean, they were just unbelievably good. Anyway, so what we found out about older Highland Park. Right, so Highland Park, obviously, as it seems to get older, by and large becomes more maltier and denser and thicker. But the best of these bottlings certainly had the balance between that kind of character and the more sort of fresher, barley kind of led character of some of the younger bottlings, some of the sort of like the 15, 16-year-olds. And what else have we found out? In fact, it just ages, it keeps going. It obviously matures very, very slowly, and this is why, like I said, you know, the distillery can bottle 50-year-old malts with obviously you know, no problem at all. Although I'm guessing, because I've never tasted it, that they're probably more likely going to be you know, a relatively large sherry element in the older bottlings, because sherry does seem to sort of like last a length of time. But you know, on this evidence, you know, it lasts a length of time. It lasts in American oak as well. You know, maybe it might not go 50 years in a, you know, an American oak barrel or a hoggy or something like that, but it'll certainly sort of go 30 odd years. And the 31-year-old is definitely sort of testament to that. So so there you have it. That's Highland Park, all done, and as they say, next week we'll be moving on to something completely different. So I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of Highland Park, and it's probably, it might even be the last time I do sort of 3 episodes of the show on one different distillery. Who knows? But I think this has been, you know, a really interesting journey, and again, like I said, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the show, and I hope you enjoyed the other 2 episodes of the show as well. And If you've enjoyed it, and tell your mates, tweet about it, and stick it on Facebook, all that kind of stuff, So anyway, until next time, and there's nothing left. Good afternoon and good ramming.